Rakesh, working for a company called Renaissance. We are in the educational space. To give you a little bit of background, like there are millions of students who go to schools, use our software on a daily basis. So we are a pretty high traffic volume. We have a pretty high traffic volume application that's currently being used by millions of students. And we have seen, like, with all this COVID and all, we have seen a lot of drastic changes in our application usage patterns. Things have gone up pretty high. So that being said, I think we moved to Redline 3 months back. One of the primary driver was like as most of the folks on has mentioned, that cost was the primary driver for us, because we as a company in the last 2 years have moved from traditional data centers to moving our entire applications to AWS. Now we are at a point where we are like consolidating different clients across different zones, because 33% of schools in US use our software. So we have clients that are widely spread across the whole US, and there are some international clients that we have in the pipeline too. So just to give you an idea, right? When we moved from BlazeMeter to Redline, we are saving 90% on our costs on testing. That has been a huge win for us in the company here. And I really love the product, right? It's pretty straightforward. You have what you need to be able to run, scale, get the data that you need. Also on the usage pattern, my usage for Redline is completely API based. Personally, I don't like to log in. Personally, I don't like to set up plans. And that's the reason why I was bugging Chris and Rich initially during our POC to give me all these API calls. And basically, the reason for me asking the API calls is here at Renaissance, I do not run tests. Like when there are needs, when teams are doing their testing, it's not like, hey, Rakesh is going to run a test for us. Here in our company, I like to put everything into the hands of the teams, like developers. So if someone wants to run a test, I give them this Jenkins job. If someone wants to say, hey, I'm going to run a specific test, I want the ability for or the capacity for a developer to be able to run a test using our Redline. So that's where I feel that if there are more API based, if the company can spend more time towards building more API infrastructure, it would really help in me pushing things onto the developer side. It all comes down to, hey, how do we shift left? I know there is a lot of talk about it. I think our initial speaker was also talking about how can we test early. Testing early means developers needs to test it. And when I'm providing infrastructure to them, they should be able to say, hey, I have this JMX file. How can I run a test? How can I use Redline? So my thought process has been, how can I model this tool to help developers run tests early in the life cycle? We are not there yet where most of our developers, so our engineering team is, we have around 400 engineers here at Renaissance, and I'm the only performance engineer. So it's in my best interest to help others run their testing. So I think I've covered the usage pattern. Like we are heavily into Jenkins, heavily into API-based testing, and most of my data lands in time series database where I've built dashboards that's the teams use. So they just kick off this Jenkins job and data lands in our Elk stack, and they go and look at the dashboards. That has been our primary usage. There are lots of less folks who would log into the Redline 13 and look at the test results as a whole. Things I want to cover, like things that are not so great so far has been, as I said, like if I need to change, let's say a Jenkins, sorry for being like, probably I'm getting into too details, but logging into Redline 13, creating a test plan, like, typically the current model is that you have to clone it and then save it as a new Jenkins template. That has been a pain point for us because I cannot do it over an API where I say, hey, I have this update for the test plan, and how do I do it without going into the UI. Reporting side of things, obviously taking into consideration of costs, right? Since you also want to maintain the cost lower, I don't expect the company to have a really good analytics tool, right, on these testing. So we were able to build the plugins where we are sending our data into Elk, so that's not a huge problem anymore. Another pain point that I've observed is since my customers are spread across the US, I really like my testing to be also spread across, like the servers that we spin up in AWS need to spin up across different zones in AWS. But I think it was Chris who was mentioning that sometimes when those servers don't spin up, you would see that if you are trying to spin up servers in US East, there are no available servers. That could be a problem with AWS. They spun up on US West, right? So that there is some improvement that we could do there as part of that. From the expectation side, I would really love to see how we can make Redline 13 more developer friendly. To give, as I said earlier too, is how can I, if I have a developer who wants to run a test, how can I build him an infrastructure that's going to say, hey, you just give me the JMX file, I'm going to run it on Redline 13. So that has been my focus at Renaissance to actually push things towards the developer side. And see how I could help get the testing done earlier. Also, something that would be really helpful is, since I'm using API, right, I control everything on what tests I start. If there is an issue in the test, I pick each and every test plan and kill it. Everything is being done from API side. But if Redline 13 can give me that, hey, you have these 10 different test plans and you can make a master plan out of it and just run the master plan, or that's going to handle the overall test for you. So I know this is a lot of data. Sorry about that, but I'm just covering all the points.
This is great. It's appreciated, and it's also good to share these concepts and ideas with others too, right? Because some others may want to start shifting left by integrating with an API. So I love it.
And one thing that I want to also add is I know probably someone mentioned that if you have to change a plan, right, you would have to log into Redline 13 and create a new plan. To avoid that, what we have done is we have requested Redline 13 to build an S3 plugin for us. So all my test plans now sit in S3 buckets in our AWS infrastructure. So the way it works is if I make updates to my test plans, I have Jenkins jobs that automatically takes these updated test plans and put them in S3 so that most of the things are automated and I don't have to worry about going into Redline 13 and updating my test plans. So that has been a really, really helpful feature. I really appreciate you guys building that out for us. That has tremendously saved us lots of time.
Great. Right. And it also makes the tests slightly more secure. They sit in your environment and they never actually sit in our environment. Makes it a little bit harder for us to debug sometimes, but it's better for you.
Yep. And the security teams has been really happy that, hey, I'm not, all my data sits in our S3 account.